It was a chilly evening in downtown Dallas, the streets buzzing with the usual rush of cars and people, each one moving with urgency as if the city's heartbeat pulsed through their veins. But among the hurried crowd, there was one man who moved slowly, not because he wanted to but because life had slowed him down. His clothes were tattered, his beard long and unkempt, his eyes carrying the weight of years of struggle. He was a homeless man, someone the city often ignored, blending into the corners of sidewalks like forgotten shadows. He had been standing near a bus stop for hours, asking people for change, $1 here or there, just enough to buy something warm to eat. Most walked past him as if he were invisible, their eyes fixed ahead, pretending not to hear his quiet pleas. Then came a moment he didn't expect. A black SUV pulled up near the corner, and stepping out was Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Known for her fiery speeches and unapologetic defense of justice, she carried herself with authority, yet also with an approachable warmth that made people stop and notice her. The homeless man, unsure whether he should even ask, hesitated for a moment. But hunger pushed him forward. He looked at her and in a voice weak but clear enough, he said, "Ma'am, can you give me $1? The question seemed ordinary, but what happened next was anything but. Jasmine didn't walk past him, nor did she reach for her wallet in silence. Instead, she stopped, turned fully toward him, and locked eyes with the man. The busy street seemed to pause. People nearby who recognized her slowed down, curious to see how she would react. With a slight smile, Jasmine crouched down so that she was at his level, face to face. She didn't hand him $1 immediately. Instead, she asked, "What's your name?" The man, taken aback, stuttered before finally saying, "James, ma'am." "My name's James." "Well, James," Jasmine replied gently, "why only $1? What will that do for you tonight?" James blinked, unsure how to answer. Nobody had ever asked him that before. Most either tossed a coin without looking or ignored him completely. His voice cracked as he said, $1 gets me a cup of coffee, keeps me warm for a while." Jasmine nodded slowly, and then her tone shifted, carrying that same commanding power she often used in Congress, but softened with compassion. "James, you don't deserve just $1. You deserve dignity. You deserve shelter, food, and a chance to stand back on your feet. $1 won't fix that, will it?" A hush seemed to fall over the street. Even strangers passing by began to listen, realizing they were witnessing something rare. Jasmine reached into her purse, but instead of handing him a single bill, she pulled out a crisp $50 note. She placed it into James's trembling hands. His eyes widened, his mouth falling open in disbelief. "Ma'am, I don't know what to say," he stammered. But Jasmine wasn't finished. She placed her hand firmly on his shoulder and said, "James, don't thank me. Use this tonight to get yourself something warm to eat and a safe place to rest. But remember this moment, because tomorrow, you still have worth, even if no one gives you $1. Don't let this city convince you you're invisible." The man's eyes filled with tears. For years he had been surviving on scraps of kindness, moments too few and far between, but here was someone who not only saw him but spoke to him like he mattered. People standing nearby began to clap quietly, and one woman pulled out her own wallet to give James some money too. Another man offered him food from a nearby restaurant. Within minutes, James had more help than he'd had in weeks. It wasn't just Jasmine's money, it was the way she spoke life back into him, reminding everyone present of a simple truth. That every person, no matter their circumstances, holds value. James wiped his tears with the back of his hand and whispered, "You didn't just give me money, you gave me hope." Jasmine looked at him firmly and said, "And don't you ever forget it. Hope is worth more than $1. She then stood up, adjusted her jacket, and walked toward her car, but not before turning back and addressing the small crowd that had gathered. If you can spare $1, a meal, or even a kind word, give it. Because sometimes what people really need is not charity, but to be seen, to be reminded they matter. With that, she left, but her words hung in the air long after she was gone. James sat on that corner, clutching the $50 as if it were the most precious thing he had ever owned, not because of its value, but because of what it represented. For the first time in a long time, he felt like a man again, not just a shadow on the sidewalk. That night, he ate a warm meal, found a bed at a shelter, and carried with him something even greater, a renewed sense of self-worth. And the city, if only for a moment, remembered that behind every plea for $1 is a story, a soul, and a human being who deserves to be seen. Would you like me to also expand this into a more dramatic, emotional keynote style, like a viral speech, up to 1,000 words, with more tension and depth, so it really feels powerful? Picture this, a cold evening in the heart of the city where the sidewalks are alive with footsteps, car horns, and hurried faces, yet somewhere in the corner of that busy street sits a man who has been forgotten by the world, his clothes worn thin by years of struggle, his face marked by stories no one cared to listen to, his eyes tired but still carrying a flicker of life. He is a homeless man named James. And on this night hunger and loneliness had reduced his hope to something as small as the sound of a single request, "Can you give me $1?" Now imagine at that exact moment, as fate would have it, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett steps out of a car, and she is not just another passerby, she is someone who carries weight with her words, power in her presence, and a voice that has shaken rooms filled with the most powerful people. Yet here on this sidewalk she meets James, a man invisible to the world, and he asks her for just $1, just one. What could she do? She could walk past him like others, she could quietly give him the dollar and move on, or she could stop and do something no one expected, and Jasmine, true to who she is, chose the third path. She turned, looked James straight in the eyes, crouched down so that her eyes met his, and asked him something that stunned him, "What's your name?" He blinked, confused, because when you've been ignored long enough, hearing your own name asked with sincerity feels almost shocking, and he replied softly, "James, ma'am, my name is James." And then came the moment that changed everything. Jasmine said, "James, why just $1? What will $1 do for you tonight?" His voice cracked as he explained, $1 gets me a cup of coffee. Keeps me warm for a while, and though his words were simple, they carried the weight of despair, because when survival becomes measured in single dollars, in single cups of coffee, it is no longer just about money, it is about dignity slipping away piece by piece. Jasmine listened, really listened, and then with the same passion she uses when standing on the congressional floor she said, "James, you don't deserve just $1, you deserve more, you deserve dignity, food, shelter, hope, and a chance to stand again, and no single dollar can give you that." Her words hung in the air like a spark, and people nearby began to stop, sensing that something powerful was happening right there on the sidewalk, a moment that wasn't just about charity but about humanity. Jasmine reached into her purse, pulled out not $1 but 50, a crisp note that she placed into his trembling hands, and James's eyes filled with tears, his lips quivering as he whispered, "I don't know what to say," but Jasmine wasn't finished. She placed her hand on his shoulder and said, "Don't thank me. James, use this to take care of yourself tonight, but remember, your worth is not measured by this money, your worth is not measured by how the world looks at you, tomorrow and every day after, you are still somebody, you are not invisible." And as she said this, something extraordinary happened. People around them began to open their wallets. One woman offered him money, another man offered him food. Within moments James received more kindness than he had seen in months, not because people suddenly became generous but because Jasmine reminded them of a truth buried beneath their busy lives, that behind every plea for $1 lies a human being with a story. James held that $50 bill as though it was made of gold, not because of its value but because of what it represented. It wasn't paper, it was recognition, it was hope, it was proof that he was still seen. And in a trembling voice he said, "You didn't just give me money, you gave me hope," and Jasmine, standing tall again, replied, "Hope, James, is worth more than $1, it is the beginning of change." Then she turned to the small crowd that had gathered and raised her voice, "If you can spare $1, a meal, or even a kind word, give it, because sometimes people don't just need money, they need to be seen, they need to be reminded that they matter. The crowd applauded, not because of the money but because they had been reminded of their own power, the power to see others, the power to acknowledge the humanity in someone they might otherwise walk past. And then Jasmine stepped back into her car, leaving behind not just a man with $50 but a street corner lit with the flame of compassion. That night James ate a warm meal, found shelter, and for the first time in a long time went to sleep not as an invisible man but as James, a man with worth, a man with hope, and though his struggles were far from over, he carried within him the strength to face tomorrow with a renewed spirit. And the lesson was clear. In a world where we measure everything in dollars, sometimes the most shocking response is not in the amount given but in the humanity shared. Sometimes the real gift is not the money itself but the reminder that every life, no matter how broken it seems, still holds value, still deserves dignity, and still deserves to be seen. Do you want me to make this even more dramatic and emotional, like a viral motivational speech with pauses, repetition, and rhetorical power, so it feels like something you'd hear on a stage?